Hey everybody, it's Nissa, the hypnobirthing midwife. We've got a brilliant guest today, and it's a really important topic that's not talked about very much. So, do introduce yourself, love.
Hi everyone, I'm Calli. I'm a senior yoga teacher, teacher trainer, mum of two, and mum of two C-section births. If you're interested in seeing any more of this stuff, I'm teaching a pre and postnatal teacher training towards the end of the year. My website is calliyoga.co.uk, and you can find me at Calli Yoga. Woo!
We're so lucky to have you, Calli. So, it's so good. I think that mums that have birth by cesarean get a really rough deal when it comes to lots of things, but especially recovery. We don't really give them much information as midwives, we don't prepare them. And actually, even when you look online, there's so much information about everything on the internet, but actually, C section recovery, not so much. So
No.
I'd love to hear maybe just a little bit about your journey, and I know you've learnt loads on the way.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot. So I had my first baby 7 years ago, nearly 7 years ago, and he was an emergency C-section, which was a huge process. I could tell a whole story around that, but I knew all I knew was I didn't want a C-section. The C-section was the devil. I'd done all this stuff, and everything I sort of read about was, the C-section is the devil, and it's the worst thing that can possibly happen for you and the baby. And so it was a real challenge that I had to face then when I was told I had to have an emergency. And I think from the emergency side of things, I had quite a lot of trauma connected to that. And for a long time, I couldn't even look at my scar. I had such a negative relationship with my scar, and had sort of quite a slow healing process. I rushed everything because I was much younger then, I knew much less, and I rushed everything, and I just wanted to get back to myself, and so that was a journey that I had. And when I was looking around then, there really was no information whatsoever on healing. I found little bits, and I just learned over time how to heal. But my healing process and my journey was quite slow. And I think up to a year after I'd had Kobe, I was still experiencing, I'd gone back into hospital with an infection and all this kind of stuff as well. And so through my healing there, it was slow, and I rushed everything. And so the second time around, I've just had recently, 10 months ago, my baby girl, as you know. And so I'd chosen, when I found out I was pregnant with her, I realized how much trauma I was still holding. I thought I'd healed, and I thought I'd done all the work. And then when I realized that I was going to have to give birth again, I was like, I couldn't stop crying. I was just, it was something I had to work through. And I decided then to have elected C-section. So through that decision, I wanted to really empower myself and make it my own choice, rather than the situation that I found myself in with Kobe, where I just felt all choices were taken away from me and my voice wasn't heard. And so this time around, I was like, I'm going to make it a choice and make it an empowered choice, and make it then as peaceful and as beautiful a process as it can be. Which it was. There was a few complications towards the end, but it was a really beautiful and peaceful process. And I did loads and loads of research, and I've become really passionate about how important it is postnatally to focus on your healing and your well-being. And so I've been working with loads of women myself. So, when you think you find something, you're like, I've got to do this. This is like what I'm meant to be doing. And so I've done loads and loads of work and loads of research. And my healing journey since having Marley has been really empowered and really rich. And I feel like I've actually come back stronger 10 months down the line through what I've done. And I have taken my time with it as well. So the first time around, I ran a half marathon by this time. Fastest ever half marathon, but not necessarily the best idea I've ever had. But I was in that mindset, whereas this time around, I've taken it really slowly and done lots and lots of research around what it is and what we need to look at in terms of healing. And so I want to talk about a few of those things today, really.
What would be brilliant is if you would maybe just think, women that haven't had a cesarean before, what could they expect in the first days or week and then month, for they're healing their body, but also it might be physical, definitely, but maybe some emotional as well, perhaps. What would you say? You've had both an emergency and a planned cesarean. What do you think would be normal for the average mum?
I think whether it's a choice that you've made and elected, or whether it's an emergency C-section, the first week is going to be a big challenge. There's a lot going on physically, and I think to really lower your expectations of what you're going to do in that first week, and just really dive into nourishment and nurturing yourself. Making sure that you have someone to do all of the chores. You're not going to be running a hoover around. You're not going to be washing the dishes. It's just not going to happen. And hell no, don't even do that for however long you can get away with not doing that. I think one thing that was always a real surprise to me is how much you cannot straighten your body up initially. So obviously, if you think you've had the incision here, and so the whole body will curl into that incision as it heals. So everything's kind of pulled in. And then you add that into holding your baby constantly, and so you end up in this quite flexed position. Something I've spoken to a lot of mums about, the real simple things like how to get out of bed, because you can't sit up, and you really want to avoid that sense of flexing through the spine. So a really simple way is you literally just want to roll yourself over, and then use your hands to lift you up. So just knowing that it's going to be a really slow process that first week. Another key thing is, and I was speaking to a friend of mine who's just had a C-section this week, and I was saying, stay on top of your pain meds. Really, just my husband, bless him, had all of my medication in a spreadsheet, and so he was just coming and he was doing, because you will have an injection as well to thin the blood, and so just making sure you stay on top of all of your medication to help you stay as pain-free as possible. In the first few days, though, there is stuff that you can do to start to help your recovery. One thing is stay really hydrated. Stay really hydrated. So drink, she says, as I take a sip. We are staying hydrated. So stay hydrated, because you want to be able to flush all of the medication, everything out of your system. So staying hydrated, and then moving as much as you can. So little walks, a walk to the bathroom initially is going to feel like a marathon. And when you have your C-section, you have the 12 hours where you're in recovery, and then they get you up and they tell you to walk to the next ward. And you're literally like, what is this? Like, what are these legs? It's madness. But the beauty is that it's such a speedy process. After the first week, you're like, you go from sort of stooped over and not really being able to shuffle further than the bathroom, to being able to start to lift and lengthen and to walk and actually lift your feet rather than scuttle them across the ground. So that first week, one thing that you can do is just moving your joints. So in your seated position, just working on mobilizing the wrists. You're going to want to roll the shoulders, a little bit of gentle side bending, ankles, and just get into all of the joints that you can get into in that first week. So you're staying, the joints are really key to feeling well throughout the whole body. So it's a really good way to minimize pain, is to just keep the joints really mobile. So that's one thing that you can do in that first week, and be really careful with getting up and down. Another thing, actually, one more thing I want to say is, when you're feeding the baby, make sure you've got a cushion that you can rest the baby on, so that you're not constantly holding, and that you can protect your scar as it starts to heal as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great tip with the joints. I think that's one that probably people won't think of much.
And anyone can do that, no matter where they've come from, no matter how fit they were before. Anyone can just, and that will make such a difference to the body as a whole. Just shoulders, you kind of want to get into your neck, just really focus on softening. The other key thing, and you can do this probably a couple of days post-surgery, and as soon as you feel ready, is just to start to breathe and become aware of the breath down into your scar tissue. So as you're breathing, you want to really allow the diaphragm, and depending on how much trauma you're holding there, it will be, when I work with postnatal women, we spend a lot of time just working on really, can we get the breath down there? And so that in itself, so breathing diaphragmatically down starts to release the scar tissue really gently. It also starts to work into the pelvic floor as we start to get our 3D breath to come back. And then as part of your rehab phase, once you feel able to breathe down, you'll start to try and suck the belly into the spine as you exhale. And so that's just slowly over time. And when I had both my C-sections, I would do that through the nights of breastfeeding. I would just focus on my 3D breath down. And then as I breathed out, trying, and initially you cannot, you're like, there is nothing happening right now. But when you try and do that a few times every day, and over time the abdominals will just start to knit back together, the pelvic floor will start to strengthen as well. So that's another thing you can start literally a couple of days after
That's
baby.
a brilliant one for whatever birth you've had as well,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah.
We'll have that after birth where we're like, where's my pelvic floor gone? Or, you know.
What is that? Yeah, but it's amazing how quickly it comes back though. Like if you do start to focus and really place your awareness there, it can be really powerful.
Nice. That's brilliant. So that's kind of the first week. And then thinking a little bit longer term for our ladies, maybe the first month and ongoing, any suggestions or tips around, you know, beginning to really get stronger in that longer journey? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's always important, I think whether you've had a C-section or vaginal birth, then what's really important is to honor whatever came before the birth. So depending on how active, how well you felt through the pregnancy, it's going to be dependent on your journey then back into strength and fitness. So always honor where you started before the birth and then move from there. And one of the main things I think is really important, and I know you'll agree 1,000,000%, is to let yourself off the hook and to not think about your movement or your return to fitness and strength as trying to get your body back and in my humble opinion, you will never get your body back, but it will come back in such an amazing way that's even more beautiful and more powerful. And I often see that most postnatal women come back stronger because we don't get the sleep healing, you know, we don't get all of the other stuff that you get before you had a baby. You come back and you're much more resilient and you're much more respectful of your body. And I think that's a really powerful and empowered place to start from. Another thing I wanted to touch upon is obviously was told by a doctor, you know, my experience is you have your C-section and then you're told don't lift anything heavier than your baby and don't exercise for at least 6 weeks. And that's all I was told. There was nothing else I was told. And I think it's really important to recognize that there's a real difference, and 100% I'm an advocate for not exercising for at least 6 weeks, if not 10 to 12 weeks C-section birth. However, movement is completely different to exercise. And so it's differentiating between the two. Exercise is thinking about getting your heart rate up, having a goal-based thing, like I'm going to run for 20 minutes or whatever, or I'm working towards this, or think of that as your exercise. And that will come, and that should come, you know, in time. But within days, you should be thinking about nourishing movement. How can I nourish myself, my body, through movement? And so there's a real difference, and you can start moving really quickly, exercising down the line, but moving, what is movement? You know, like I said, joints, get the joints moving first few days. Then down the line, I'd say 1 to 2 weeks, you might feel able to do some cat-cows and some really gentle yoga movements on your yoga mat, whatever. And again, you don't have to be making mad shapes. You can just be getting in there and just put some music on, take some time out just for you to breathe into your scar, to connect back into the belly. Within 2 weeks, if you're doing nourishing movement and you're walking, walking is one of the best things you can possibly do as soon as you feel able. Short walks, don't be carrying your baby in a carrier or anything, just so you know, short walks, get your partner to carry the baby, because walking just gets everything moving. And we've got to recognize that movement isn't just about being fit or strong, it's about all of the systems working together. So it's going to release your lymph, which is going to be holding all of the toxins from the medication that you would have had through the birth. It's going to start to, you know, it's going to balance your nervous system, which is going to balance everything else. So just recognizing that movement is really a healing journey. It's not, I'm trying to get fit and get my body back. And so the more we can treat our movement practice like that, I think the more enjoyable it becomes as well. And to take 10 minutes out and have a wiggle as a mum is going to be, put some good tunes on, have a wiggle, do what feels good. And I say that to all of my women that I work with, just do stuff that feels really good, especially in the first few weeks. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. You want to be feeling as good as you can in your body.
That's brilliant. I completely agree, of course. And you can get a feeling, can't you, when you know, after a birth, if you do some movement, you can feel if it's going to be, you know, exhausting, it's too much, or you feel it afterwards, definitely.
Yeah.
Or if it actually feels good and, you know, you're stretching, you're easing tension. So listening, isn't it? It's just about listening rather than pushing through, which is what we tend to do, or what I tend to do.
And what we've been encouraged to do in a society that kind of, you know, celebrates women that bounce back, and, you know, women that do it all straight away, you know, and it's kind of, it's celebrated, but I think slowly we're moving away from that rhetoric and reclaiming the space and the joy in taking it slowly. Touching on that, actually, Nissa, one thing I think is really important as well for women to explore is, what are you, we often say just listen to your body, right? Listen to your body, which is 100% true, but what are you actually listening out for? Like, what are the warning signs, or yeah, what are you looking to listen to? If something doesn't feel right, you might not know, but things to be really aware of are any real heaviness in the pelvic floor, obviously any sharp pain, anything that's causing pain, anything like that. And I'm sure, again, Nissa, you'd agree, I highly recommend, before you do return to any more strenuous stuff, go and see a women's health specialist, go and see a physio who can check out your pelvic floor and make sure it's okay. Because another big bugbear of mine is, you go to a postnatal class or whatever, and they're just like, just do your Kegels. You know, everything's about Kegels, but until you actually know what's going on in your pelvic floor, Kegels might not be the best idea for you, because you might have hypertonality in the pelvic floor, and often, not always, hypertonality is often more common within C-section births, just because of the scar tissue and how, if you can imagine that you're wearing like a skin tight onesie and then we've tied a knot kind of here, then everything's going to kind of get pulled in, pulled up potentially. And so often a more taut pelvic floor is common for postnatal C-section women. So, but often we don't know that. You don't know that. And so you might just be doing your Kegels and making it even worse. So get yourself checked out. I think it's a brilliant investment. But a good sign is if you're trying to do a Kegel and you can't lift, probably a good sign that you might have some tension there that you need to release.
And that's such a great point, Calli, because yes, as medical professionals, we'd say the same. Do your pelvic floor exercises, and we don't talk about pelvic floors that are too tight. And I think that's, yeah, it's very, very common, actually, probably just as common as pelvic floor that's, you know, not strong. So yeah, a brilliant point. I love your analogy of the wetsuit. It's brilliant. It really helps, I'm sure, for women to understand you know, that everything is connected. What would you say, any tips or suggestions for the scar itself?
Yeah. So I've shared quite a lot about this on my Instagram. So again, another thing I'm really passionate about, and something that you're not told about post-surgery, which I feel should change. I think it should just be a common rhetoric through everyone now, that, you know, it's nothing new, that we're starting to recognize that the whole body is connected. And often I think post C-section or post any birth, you know, especially if you've had to have any sort of interventions, there's going to be that scar tissue. What can happen C-section wise is, so obviously the connective tissue is cut through to bring baby out, the womb's cut through to bring baby out, and this then heals and pulls everything in. So as it's healing, there's a, I call it the kink in your fascia. So there's a kink in your myofascial matrix from the head to the toes. There's now a knot, and that knot over time, if it's not released, can cause adhesions. And these adhesions can actually start to, because in the healing process, the nervous system knows that you need to heal, and so it starts to allocate collagen fibers really randomly. So, you know, it's a random process, which is great. It's just, they're there. But what can often happen is that then starts to, it might attach the bowel to the bladder, and it can attach all of the abdominal organs kind of together in the womb and stuff. And so things can get just really quite gnarly in there, gnarly. And so the first thing, like I said, that 3D breath, breathing down into the scar, is going to help release from the inside out. But then really, really crucially, starting to do some scar tissue release yourself. I was very lucky. I had a dear friend who paid for a postnatal massage therapist to come to my house 2 weeks after my C-section and give me, and she was the first one that did the scar tissue release on me, and that was amazing. And then after that, I try to do it every day, and just a little bit of oil, and you go really gently, and it'll take time to be able to kind of go in there. But you want to, there's lots of videos on the internet, but you want to work across the whole of the scar tissue, up, down, sideways, and circles. And a lot of women have contacted me saying, oh, I had like a C-section 10 years ago and I didn't know this stuff. Is it too late? And the beauty is it's never too late. You can release it. You can start to work on that scar tissue at any point. I think another key point to add to that is a lot of the time women are surprised at the kind of referred pain that they might have from a C-section that often you think is not relevant or isn't connected, but it is completely connected. So some examples of this is really chronic shoulder pain on one side will be connected to the scar tissue. I had with my first C-section, it was more pain, my shoulder was more painful than the scar, like it was agonizing, and that was completely connected. So by releasing your scar tissue here, you're going to release that. Second time round with Marley, I would wake up and both of my legs would be completely numb. They would be completely numb and pins and needles, like the whole leg. And again, that's just the scar tissue is creating the nerve endings have been sort of severed and stuff. So it's just recognizing that you will get these strange things, and to know that it is fine and it's normal. It is normal and it will get better, but just keep on doing the work, but not to be overly kind of shocked when you get these random, your feet can go strange as well. Yeah. So.
We definitely, that's not out there. I don't think women would know or expect that. No. And the scar tissue massage, that's also, I'm sure, incredibly useful if you've had some perennial trauma stitches or an episiotomy.
Yeah.
So a thing to do down there as well. So amazing. Oh, amazing. Calli, so much good stuff. I know that you have to go because you're a busy lady, but I'm sure we could carry on for hours.
Days about it. Yeah, we could literally talk for days. But I'm planning hopefully next week, baby's allowing, I'm going to do a little post just on a couple of core exercises that are really safe to start to rehab the core postnatally, and that's C-section and physiological birth. They're the same ultimately in terms of rehabbing to an extent. So I'm going to share that next week. So if anyone wants to come and have a look, I'll put that on the Instagram, on the gram.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. I shall come and watch for sure. Thanks so much for your time, love. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mwah! I'm going to say bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.